Good morning, everybody. This is Sean and Vic from Easy Street Billiards. Doing another morning stream for y'all. I don't know how many people are going to be on today, and it's all good. A couple things that I wanted to talk about, or actually mainly just one thing, but it could take forever to talk about. A few of my homies have been feeling like they're underperforming based off of their abilities. They think that they feel like they haven't had that breakthrough moment, and I think people are feeling some sort of a way about it. So I just wanted to talk about myself as far as my experiences with playing events where I felt like going into it I was ultimately prepared and that I had confidence that I was playing my best game and that I felt like I was going to do really well, and then for whatever reason it didn't happen, and I emotionally, was just like a wreck about what the result was, just feeling like I did everything I was supposed to do. All my, planning and all that went off without a hitch. Preparation, like all the things, like if you're traveling, you got to pick the hotel, traveling companions. You got to eat right. If you can't eat your regular diet, maybe that can be a thing. And if you like go through all the different little things and you do everything right as far as and then you still have a bad result, then that it can be taxing, and I think that one of the things that is really complicated about pool is that it's, being able to perform at a high level is more than just being good at the game of pool. It also has to do with your ability to not necessarily block out the distractions of the environment that you're in. That's going to be when you're performing and you're playing in a tournament. Don't mind the dog. If you're playing in a tournament or something that's like a lot of people are spectating, or maybe you're playing in, for example, Lincoln City, a large tournament where they got like 30, 40, 50 tables going, and people are from all different areas, and you don't necessarily know them all, and I think that people don't realize a little bit of like the fact that the environment itself is the challenge that you're trying to understand and learn about, which is that how can I perform in conditions where I don't have control or experience over the people that are around me, and I don't know everyone, so then there's the expectations that can be created by playing against unfamiliar opponents. In these league handicap tournaments, you're already like sort of facing the demon of Fargo, which is like, for a lot of people, they use the Fargo number to establish a value on their own game, I guess, and it can be a limiting belief, where people can say, oh, my Fargo is XYZ, but I really feel like I'm better than that. And I think if you were to take a poll of, regularly competing players, almost all of them would say the same thing, which means that some of them are wrong, some of them are right, and it's not just about the number, even though you think it might be. If you start paying attention to things that are not helping you, then it can take you away from it. So I wanted to just kind of expose the different factors that I think that I had to like become more aware of, so that I could then learn how to be successful in larger and larger stages of the game. It's like we're right here. I'm in my garage playing on my home table. This is a controlled environment. There's no variables that I'm not really aware of in here. I can change the music if I want to. I can invite the people that I want to over here, and we're going to play the game that I'm choosing to play because I have the option, because I have total control, or I accept the terms of the game that's being offered if I'm playing in a game, or all those things are under my control, and you have the time and ability to reflect before you make decisions. And when you get into an environment where you're learning how to perform at a high level and you're experiencing a new scenario, you have to then realize that it's not going to be so much about playing your best game. It's going to be more about not using so much of your energy not playing, if that makes sense. You want to use all your energy while you're playing, and you want to just stay out of the way and be as free as you can to relax and to absorb all the new information that is coming at you through the experience. And that is the challenge, where it's like the experience that you're really feeling is like, well, you're running out of rack and nine ball and you've played the game. How many games? I have thousands of games in the Fargo system, and I'm sure that many other people do as well that will eventually watch this. And when you maybe only a few hundred of those games are actually in championship situations, if where you're playing in a truly groundbreaking for your experiential person situation, like a league tournament, you might only play one a year, and then you're going to play like several matches, and then that's all the experience you get playing in those situations. But there's going to be hundreds of people around, walking around, looking, checking you out, and then if you're playing well or playing poorly, then all the eyes on you or away from you or whatever, it can all be a big distraction, and that can pull your focus away and get you thinking that things are going a different way. And the other thing that's very interesting is the more people are around, the more important it is for you to protect your own emotional boundaries, where so many other people are playing in tournaments and they're going to be triggered during the tournament because everyone's trying to win. We're all competing. We're fighting for our lives, so to speak, our pool life, trying to stay in the tournament. And that kind of changes the way people behave, and it is taxing if you let it be. And that's part of it, where you gotta just forget as much as you can about what's going on and just try to enjoy the moment of the fact that you're in basically a new situation. If you think about like a tournament that you're going to go and travel to, I think that the best way to look at it is like you're going on a vacation to go and do the thing that you love with people that are your family, even if you don't know them, because everyone that plays pool that's a competitor, it's like the best way I think to look at everyone else is like your family, because then you're not going to, you can blame people for their behaviors, but I think that it's all most people are acting well within the range of like acceptable behavior almost all the time. There's just a few cases where people get so far out of line that someone needs to be talked to, but like those larger tournaments, you normally have an official, a tournament director, or someone that can be talked to that's going to like minimize that sort of activity. So then it's just going to be within the realms of like normal levels of frustration, normal levels of anxiety, normal levels of all these negative emotions that you're going to have to deal with from people that you don't know. You don't know their standard responses, so you're going to have to if you're playing well or you're playing in a tournament, maybe someone starts following you, watching you because you're playing good, or they're just a homie of a homie or whatever, or they, maybe, you're playing in a match and then your opponent has like his whole family decides to show up and watch, and now you got like it's you against 6 people, and they're all going to be spectating and doing whatever they're doing. You have no control over that, and all these things can compile and really make it tough to like feel like we can perform because we're holding all this extra weight of a new scenario, and then now we're like expecting ourselves to just uh, you know, fire them in like we do in practice. But in practice, we're not, you know, we're only focusing on this. We're not focusing on what's around. And I think that the thing that you want to be able to advance yourself, the way that I think about it is I think as you get better at pool, your ability to encompass the entire zone that you exist in and be okay with all of it and know that there's nothing that can be done most of the time to change any of that, and thus focusing on it is not important. The craziness that's going on over there, you know, or the fact that like maybe you're in a, you know, you find yourself in a pro event and you got, you know, I don't know, Carlo Beato is playing a table over, and then you got like 40 people watching them, and some of them are sitting next to you because, you know, no one's watching you play, but then you might be down over a ball on that side of the table, and now it's his turn over there, and he's watching you play now, and now you're having to deal with that. You know, you can't control any of that, but if you let that affect you, it's just gonna like reduce your ability to be able to play this game. You know, and that's maybe an extreme example, but I think that it highlights the fact that like there's a lot of things that can happen that have nothing to do with making the balls that could throw you off, and they're all like actually common situations for other people that do this more often, and that's kind of how it is that when you start thinking about like, can I see myself making this run out and doing it while 500 people are watching my every move, and being comfortable with that, knowing that that's, as I get better, that's a higher and higher likelihood that eventually someone is going to be watching you. Like a lot of people are going to be watching you play, and you're going to be expecting yourself to play just as well as you do in practice. You know, but I think that the best way to think about it is that you're just always practicing. There's always something that you're like not good at that's happening that you should be working to improve your skill at, and some of that is just fading random things, and that if you can prioritize your own process and just stick to that, and then just take any distraction, anything that's outside of your control, and just kind of reject it, and then go back to what your highest thing is, which is like trying to perform. And then we just constantly use that as your like bar or metric for success, you know, because as you continue to like gain experience, you'll get used to all that stuff. It's just, I don't think that it's easy to see how you get blindsided by it so much when you add your own like emotional like desire to accomplish your goal of like winning this tournament, winning this match, you know, making that tough shot and getting shape and being precise and all that stuff is difficult enough on its own without adding in all of the extra stuff that's happening in these events that cause you to really like potentially second guess yourself or get thrown off, and then you don't ever have the chance to like rezone and recenter yourself because there's nowhere safe to go, because you're not at home, or you can't get away and rest and chill like you can when you're at your home bar and you're playing in a tournament, and you know, and you take a break and you go outside and walk around or whatever, or everyone around you is a friend, so you know, the people that you gravitate towards will be there, and then the ones that are kind of off to the side that you're not so close with, they will stay over there. But you know, when all these like bigger events, it seems as though it's like you're playing in a team event, and now you're kind of hanging out with your team homies, which, you know, if you're fortunate, you know, they're like really good friends of yours, and then you're able to play with them. But most likely, you know, you're gonna have like not as strong of a bond, and the bond is more of like, well, we're trying to play together and win this tournament, and so now you have to like learn how to maximize, you know, their ability to perform without reducing your own ability to perform so much. It's like if you just spend all your energy like pumping people up and all that are like, you know, maybe a little bit more negative, you know, mindset at that moment, because maybe they're struggling, and then, you know, it kind of like builds on itself, and now you're like having to learn how to resist that energy and come with your own strong energy, and
Brett says sensory overload.
yes, exactly. Brett said sensory overload. That's exactly what happens. Is that if you start accepting too much in, and you can't tunnel focus down, and really like go to the root of what you're doing, which is just waiting for your turn. When you're sitting, and you shouldn't be looking around unless you're like comfortable. If it makes you comfortable to look around and not to look at the table and not to look at your opponent, then do that. And it's more about finding your own way to navigate what's happening. In a healthy way. You don't want to use energy that you need for the game unless you have to. So the best thing to do, I would say, mostly is you got to set yourself up to have a lower level of expectation that you're necessarily going to play well, and that what your main goal should be in most situations is just kind of acquiring information so that you can use that later, where it's like having an expectation because you've been playing well. It's like you got to pay your dues. Even though your skill may have increased, now you're going to take your new higher increased skill level of the game itself, and now you're going to throw yourself in the mix in a higher pressure environment. And if you thought that you were going to be able to perform at a higher level against random opponents that do play well, that are playing very seriously, and you think that that's just going to be routine at the beginning of it, you're going to find that that's not the case. There's a whole host of different things you need to learn how to do when you're playing events that don't come up in practice. The game itself is a small portion of those types of things. Is there someone at the door?
The door.
Is that the bush? I'm sorry.
The bush is locked in the
Oh,
house.
is it? Okay.
No, I was clearing my throat.
Sorry. Anyways, so I think that a lot of these different things can lead you down the path of feeling like you underperformed when you gotta like learn the soft skills of competitive play and bigger tournaments and stuff like that. And then once you kind of like get the feel for that type of stuff, then you're going to allow yourself to really be able to play freely, knowing that you just are riding a different kind of, it's a bigger, crazier wave really, than you have at home in a comfort zone. So like it takes a little while to learn how to ride a heightened emotional environment, a higher, like more charged environment, and then still keep yourself energetically in that happy place that you want to be, so that you can then perform at a higher level. One of the things that I think a lot of people do is that they try to focus and use more energy to try to like over control everything, and that can work, but I think that what that ends up doing a lot of times is that you get tired, because it's going to be an activity where you're going to be using like, oh, I need to like bear down so hard to win this tournament, and that kind of stuff. It does help, but you need to practice it, and there's times when it teaches you that it's like, if you're going to only be successful when you're really bearing down hard, and you don't know how to like let off the gas so that you can rest, and so that you can keep your center, then you can struggle in these bigger events later on, because you're using too much of your energy early, or you're being burnt out through the stress of not knowing exactly how this thing is going to go on. It's like if you're playing in a large tournament, you don't necessarily know when your matches are going to be, or what you're going to do between matches. You're going to be in a foreign zone or whatever, or like if you're not at home. you know, and even if you are, you know, there's just all this downtime and stuff like that. And if you had a bad match, or like somebody else had a bad match, and now you start talking to them, now you can expend energy just having these conversations with people where you're like trying to help them, you know, at the same time, it's like you got to keep yourself in a place where you can then still perform, you know. And all these things can lead you to feeling like you didn't do very well. And I would say that looking for opportunities to find yourself to be more comfortable outside of the actual tournament while you're waiting, like, you know, it's waiting times or whatever, and just, you know, really seeing what's going on and seeing, oh, these are the kinds of things that throw me off, you know, unless I'm aware of them. And then now what I got to focus on is like, okay, what things do I need to see around me to make myself more comfortable and to not burn myself out as much? Do I need to talk less? Do I need to talk more maybe? Do I need to try to like be more casual about what I'm doing? Am I trying to be too casual about what I'm doing? You know, and then kind of just reflect on where your energy is going all the time, so that you can kind of like start noticing what you're not seeing about, well, you know, obviously if you're, you know, if you're playing well and you're performing well in practice and you're doing pretty good in league and all that stuff, and you know that your capacity, your skill capacity, you know, is much greater than what you're demonstrating on the table, you know, in a tournament, then a lot of that's like, well, I would say, really looking at, well, the variables that you're introducing between your practice game and the tournament, those variables that you're not aware of are the ones that are bringing you your performance down. And then once you can like highlight and understand like what is actually going on that's causing me to not play as well in this situation, is it like when I'm face to face with an opponent that has a certain demeanor, does that reduce, you know, my comfortability enough to throw my game off? You know, is it that, you know, in these larger tournaments, you know, I don't have a safe place to go and like reflect and visualize or whatever, or have my pregame ritual that I normally have when I'm playing league, my comfort zone, like where I can't go into it being comfortable because I'm not in a situation where I normally am at, and now I'm not even realizing that when I'm being successful that I have a whole nother routine going into it, and that's actually almost like part of like a mini, like, not, I wouldn't say it's like a pre-shot routine, but I think that people don't realize how much you rely on your routine to get you through to the next place where you're going, and that through understanding that we are very like habitual creatures, you know, and that we do run on autopilot a lot, but we need to learn how to like hone that autopilot, so to speak, through like watching what we're actually doing, seeing what we're doing, and then identifying where we could do better, so that when we are feeling like disappointment about results, you know, then it's like, well, so much of the game is out of your control that results is really not the thing that you should be trying to look at as your metric for disappointment or satisfaction. I think that, you know, winning is like a gift, that if you're ready and you show up and everything goes your way, it happens. And then you can be grateful because it happens, and it's almost like it's easy in a sense, because some of the time that you do it, it's not even really up to you. Like your opponent may not be ready to win for whatever reason, and then they miss and leave you easy outs, and then now all of a sudden you didn't even really do anything to win, as far as like having to show your own true skill level, your highest skill level, you know. And there's going to be other times when, you know, you shoot a shot that may be like one of the best shots you've ever shot in your life, and then you miss the next ball, and now basically you're like double defeated because you didn't take your time to like calm yourself and have all that. And that might be a byproduct of having the extra uncertainty or variables in play that you're not aware of in the other things, because it's almost like compounding. It's not one thing typically that throws you off. It's like a little sneaky thing that happens that kind of like gets you thinking, and then all of a sudden now that little kernel of, you know, negativity or whatever starts to grow and grow and grow until it reaches a certain size, and then it will explode and become and take control of you, so to speak. And you know, when you're playing in these larger events, these significant events, it's harder to see when they're coming about, because you're already kind of at a heightened expectation that certain things are going to happen, that you're going to like be able to exercise like more control, you know, because all of a sudden it's important now. And it's really the reverse, I'd say, is actually the best way to look at it. Like if you look at it more like I'm on vacation, I cleared my schedule from whatever I was going to be doing, and now instead of that, I'm going to be playing pool and enjoying my life, because that's how my life is set up, where I'm not playing pool because I have to. I'm playing pool because I want to, and I want to come out here and I want to play this tournament, and I want to, you know, work towards learning how to win without having it be a big deal. Like if you put in your time and you put in your reps and you keep showing up, you will continue to get better, because you're going to see where you're doing wrong. And if, as long as your highest value is growth and getting experience, and then, you know, just the act of living your life will allow you to do better at everything that you do, because you're going to learn how to be more free and less energetically dependent on what's going on around you, and more independent and in control of your own self at all times, because you know it's not important to win one tournament. It's like, I don't know, I mean, I'm a pretty good player locally and I win a lot of the like weekly events, but there's a lot of competitive players and people that come from out of town and larger events. I don't think that anyone that comes to play a tournament expects to win. They, you know, that are the top players. They know that it's not about that. It's more about, did I put in the reps? Am I going to chill out enough to like see the opportunities when they're there, capitalize when it's time, put in the extra energy that I need to get over the top, you know, apply that energy to get that focus that I need, and then take my foot off the gas and rest so that I can prepare myself for the next opponent, you know. And that's not something that you're going to practice in a practice scenario. That can only be done while you're playing in these matches against other players. So you have to work that into your thing, you know. And so much goes into it, where it's like, to me, if I can just set my life up to where I'm supposed to be here now, just by showing up, I've won, if that makes sense. There's no way to be disappointed when the whole goal was just to show up and play and learn something, right? If you show up, you play, and you learn something, then winning is like a bonus, because you know that over time you continue to show up and play and grow and learn and become a better player, that unless everyone else is doing that at the same level as you, you're going to increase your skill compared to the average field that you're going to enter, and thus your results are naturally going to get better over time, because you're doing the work, and everyone that's not doing the work is going to fall behind, and then everyone that is doing the work is going to continue to stay on par with you, with their level or whatever, unless, you know, maybe they're doing more work, which is, you know, can happen, because obviously different people have different schedules and different, you know, priorities as far as how they use their time and their energy. And, you know, someone that's putting more time and energy into the game than you are is going to have a more likelihood over time of advancing beyond your level if you don't do the same. And it's like not about whether or not I can, like, you know, play this guy over the course of my whole life and continue to be a better player than him. That's not what's important to me. You know, what's important to me is learning how to become a better player. And I know that all these events that I play are all experiences that are going to benefit me, because it's just more time on the table in new situations where you just constantly throw yourself into new situations. And then as you get used to that, then the situations which are more under control get even simpler, because there's less to deal with and there's more ability to just focus on the game, because all the outside environment stuff starts to be less weird or less engaging because you're used to it. It's like a normalcy thing, you know. So if you haven't played a lot of tournaments, you know, then in these bigger events, then it can be tricky, because I think people like build up like winning at Vegas or winning at Lincoln City, and they build it up into such a thing where that would be such a huge event that, you know, the expectation that they're building, the anticipation that they can grow into themselves, or the reverse anticipation, which is that when things start going the other way, where you're not necessarily playing your potential, or the other team is playing great, which happens sometimes too, you know, it's always going to be in these bigger events is the people that are playing best are going to win. It doesn't matter what your Fargo is, you know. So people that are playing well for whatever reason are generally going to be the ones that win, right? So it's not so much about your own skill level. It's about, like, are you going to make that ball go in there and play shape for the next ball or not on this shot, you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter really how good you are. It's like, if you showed up to the tournament, you should be good enough to execute most of the shots, you know. And then now it's about whether or not I'm capable of telling myself that it's okay to do that, and forgiving myself if I don't, because there's just a lot going on, and you know, so to try to fade the disappointment potential, I think that a lot of reframing, and even just going into it with the mindset of like, okay, well, you know, my prior successes, what did I do going into that? What was my mentality? What did it feel like? And then you take the memory of that, and you can, like, try to visualize you doing well, and then adding layers of pressure into your visualization, where I'm capable of making, you know, XYZ shot happen, or like winning a match against this player. But now, like, question mark would be like, well, can I replicate, you know, the feat when everyone that I know is watching in the stands, when in my visualization? Like, all that stuff you can add to the visualization of success if you use those sorts of techniques beforehand, which I think most people, they do on some levels. I mean, just by playing in a tournament, you should probably try to, like, put yourself in the best place to win and perform at your highest potential. That's just like, well, that seems to me as a pretty normal thing to do. You don't, I don't think it's a wise thing to show up to a tournament with and just try to lose, you know. And you know what I mean by, like, you know, it's like, well, I don't really care if I make ball, or, you know, whatever. I don't even know what you know, whatever negative mindset you might want to attach to, like, allow yourself to just, like, not care and not play. I think that most people that are going to be watching this are, like, trying to be a better player, so they're automatically going to be like, well, I'm obviously going to try to do the best I can to win, you know, and I'm trying to learn new techniques to learn how to do that, and that's all you really have to do. If you can just find one thing every day to, like, get better at with pool, then, you know, then all these, like, disappointments are kind of like, well, at the end of my career, I'm going to have learned from all these experiences, and that's where the gratitude comes from, is just by continuing to put yourself in play, and then by, like, realizing that the negativity is not really helping, right? And it's not really it's almost like programming, you know, where it's like, you're allowed to be negative because a lot of people are that way. It's not good for you, and everyone knows that, and yet we don't work as hard as maybe we could to eliminate those behaviors. And part of the negativity is the disappointment. It's like, well, if we are disappointed about our results, it's like, well, what would cause disappointment would be like, well, if we had an expectation that certain things were going to happen that we don't have control over, complete control over, and then those things don't happen, then we can feel disappointment. But I'm like, well, if we know that we don't have control over them, then how can we be disappointed when anything happens? You know, because we don't have control. It's like, you know, if I'm like hoping that something happens for me, but I don't try to do anything to make it happen, then I don't see, like, I don't think it'd be fair to be disappointed for myself in that situation. Where if there's something where, you know, I just have a ball and I'm just trying to make the shot, if I just hit the ball and didn't make it, I wouldn't necessarily be disappointed, because in order for disappointment to happen for me, I would say that if I didn't learn from the experience, even then it wouldn't be a disappointment necessarily, because if I knew that I didn't learn from the experience, at least I'd be aware. And just the awareness that the thing is happening is the beginning of change towards making it happen. So once you start realizing that, it's like, well, the disappointment is really only if you're not gaining from the experience. But as long as you're gaining from the experience, there's really no legitimate reason to be disappointed. You know, it's not life and death. You know what I mean? No one is hopefully going to be like losing their house, or like, you know, bad things are going to happen to their family if they don't make balls. You know, those types of things, that's real pressure. You know, it's like, this is just a game, you know, and, you know, if you can go into it with the mindset that I'm going to learn on every shot, you know, and that's all you have to do to feel like successful, then now it's simple. Now all I have to do is just put my best energy for trying to learn, you know, and just the process of learning is, well, your stroke gets better because you're trying to be specific about things, and you're paying attention, and your awareness is on the growth aspect of the game, which is like, how can I be more finely tuned? How can I be more subtle? How can I shoot a shot better than I would have yesterday? What would it look like? You know, can I imagine, a good quote should say would be like, can I imagine a better result than anything that I know could happen?
Brett says, do you feel more pressure to perform in a team dynamic? Also take one step forward.
Oh, am I out of the view?
Yeah.
Do I feel more pressure in a team dynamic? Well, I've played a lot of team events, and in general, I would say that everyone feels more pressure in a team event. And I think that, for myself personally, when I've done better, I've been able to frame, you know, what I've done is like, when I'm playing a team event, I prepare as best as I can, and then I know that, okay, my preparation is good. I'm assuming my teammates' preparation is good. I know going into it that everyone is going to respond to the events the way they do, and none of that has anything to do with me. Everyone is dealing with their own stuff all the time, and I'm going to automatically forgive anything that happens, and that my goal is going to be more about embracing the moment and trying to just stay adaptable and be able to pivot at any moment, because when you're playing 3 or 4 or 5 players as one player, basically being on one team, you know, because in pool it's like it's one person's turn at a time. It's not like basketball where you have 5 people on the court playing against 5 other people on the court at the same time. You are, in effect, when you're playing pool, is that you are all the same person, and you are just taking turns shooting as the same person. And because of that, you're actually a small part of what's going on. And your main goal, at least my main goal, is to stay out of the way of other people's success through my own actions. My goal is to help support the energy of the team through my own energy. When people start to attract negativity, or they may miss a shot and now they're starting to feel the beginning of disappointment, or maybe they do feel that disappointment, my goal is to help them come back to their senses, so to speak, and get back on track. And by being more about the team and trying to put the team in front of you, you can then in effect take pressure off yourself, because you know that even if I win every game, if my team loses every other game, then we will lose. And if everyone knows that, and all they do is try to make your other players play better, and if everyone was focusing on that, then it would be more likely that everyone would play better, and then other people would be then supporting your own play, and then you could potentially play better because you're not being distracted or being pulled away from your best game by other people's behaviors. If they were conscious of what they were doing on the level that you are, then everything would be probably, maybe, I mean, I wouldn't say probably, you'd like to think that things would turn out the right way for you if everyone was on the same page, energetically speaking, where everyone is like motivated to win, and then they're going to reject any negativity, and they're just going to be, you know, trying to affect positive things for the team. And by being negative, you're just bringing the whole team down, and that reduction in energy is like what you have to fight somewhat when you have players on your team, or you're the one being negative. Everyone else is then has to like combat in a way that negativity, and then that takes energy, and now you're reducing the energy available to be successful. So I think that an important thing is to just put your team first, and then, and partly you do that by playing as much as you can, getting ready, preparing yourself as best you can so that you have the max confidence that you can bring. And now you use that confidence, that knowledge that you've been practicing, you put your time in, you are prepared, then you can stop worrying about yourself, and you can start helping your players that are on your team that are struggling figure out what they need to do to be more successful so that you guys can win. And then there's no pressure because you don't expect anything out of yourself. Your main goal would be to just help your players, your other players on your team play well. And if you can do that, then you probably will do better in general. That's what my best recipe for success for teams has always been, to motivate my teammates to have a better mindset, and to stay strong mentally and be prepared for the next opportunity, and not dwell on any mistakes that they may be making that could potentially snowball into like what would be considered bad play, you know, through their own just like falling apart, you know, which is, I think everyone has seen what that looks like, you know, and avoiding those disasters is really a huge part of these team events, because if one person starts to play bad, then it's really makes it tough on the team, because you're not only are you reducing your like scores by not winning games, but you're also like making it harder for your teammates to play well, because they're having to face not only the competition pressure, but now the pressure of knowing that one of the players on my team has a negative mindset, and then that might draw me into it, and I want to guard myself against that as best as possible. So now I'm faced with one more thing that I don't want to have to deal with. So as far as the pressure goes, it's like, yeah, you feel more pressure, I would say, in a team event, but I think that it's a different kind of pressure where, and I don't know, and I can speak only for myself in this, but, you know, if you put yourself in the mindset is that you want to be the one that accepts the toughest situations, and that you want to make it as easy as possible for your team to win, and that you will take on the responsibility of making everything easier for everyone else by playing better, by acting better, then you know, the pressure is not really pressure, so to speak. All you're trying to do is just be your best self, and that shouldn't be a pressure situation. That should be looking internally to see how I can relax myself, how I can shift my perspective and be more positive to add to our, you know, available energy to like be successful at all times, and then that becomes the practice. But it's like that should be something that I think that we strive to do anyways. That's one of the beautiful things about pool is that there's really everything that makes you better at pool is actually a good life skill to have in general, like being more articulate with your vision and all that, and knowing, you know, more precisely and accurately what exactly is going to happen when you hit the ball in a certain spot and what that's going to do, and being diligent enough to learn, you know, because it's not so easy to like understand when you hit here, you're not always hitting that same spot. So just by trying to hit here and then having the ball go where it goes, you're not necessarily seeing exactly what's happening, because if you hit over here slightly, then the reaction's going to be different. So now that information you got from the result is not going to be as pure as actually if you hit the exact spot that you want, you know. And so, but in order to learn that that is going on, you have to hit enough of these balls in the same spot to realize you're not actually doing it, you know. And then you got to like, oh, well, how do I learn how to actually hit precisely where I want? That on its own is like a 10-year quest in pool, you know. It's like with those types of things, like just being diligent enough over the long haul to just realize you're not going to figure it out today, you know, and you're hoping to make like leaps and bounds, but you just more have to be like realizing that our skill level is always pretty much going to be over what we, you know, we think we're going to think that we play better than we actually do, because we don't realize that part of playing good has to do with the scenario, and that if we're inexperienced, we're unlikely to perform at our full potential, because the inexperience itself is like a lack of skill in areas that through more experience you'll gain more skill in. It's just harder to see because the game is right here in front of you, but in the midst of the cycles of the game, the repeating events of the game, you're adding like longer term repeating events into it, and each of those has a different procedure and process to which you'll have to discover for yourself what is going to make you the most successful. But the quest of like learning how to dial it in, you know, is the whole thing, where it's like, well, if you take the results of the tournament that you just played and you're like, okay, well, I really felt like I could have played better and this and that and the other thing, and like, well, now you think, okay, well, if it was shots that you didn't know that you missed, that's one thing, that's easy, right? You set the shot up and you hit it until you can do it, right? Now the question is, if you know the shot but you didn't do the shot, now there's something else that needs to be found out. It's like, what's causing that? You know what I mean? And mostly it's of lack of focus, because we're distracted by things that are going on outside of us, because we're like accepting new information the whole time, and some of that will pull us towards it, take us away from what we're doing, you know. And that's part of the experience of learning, that those things are all happening all the time, and that we're just not necessarily aware of it because we've gotten used to the situation, the conditions that we normally play in so much that we assume that when we go to another place that none of that stuff is different. We're like, oh, it's the same. It's, you know, you're playing the table. You play the table. You know, the game is the same. It is the same. But the thing is that that's the thing that you can rely on being the same. Everything else is different, and thus you kind of have to just realize part of it is experiencing it, the same thing, but in a different scenario. That is the change. Outside of what you're doing is what's different. The game doesn't change. You know, you change by putting yourself in different scenarios, and there's different things to learn from every situation you put yourself in, you know. And it's like, it's about learning how to rely on your skill in the game, and then increase your skill and experience in the situation you're putting yourself in, and then that'll allow you then to play at a higher level, I would say, and reduce pressure on yourself, knowing that part of the reason why you go and play team events is to find out if I can help my team win and perform under circumstances where I'm not going to be hitting as many balls in the same amount of time that I would be if I was playing in a singles match, or if I was playing in, you know, maybe a gambling match, or you know, whatever, or if I'm just practicing, I'm going to hit tons more balls in the same amount of time. You know, so you ask yourself, can I, in a team event, come with it at a high level, even though I'm not going to hit as many balls, and each shot is going to be on the surface more pressure because your impact opportunities for the team score are lower for every shot because obviously you're playing three-person teams. You're going to be, roughly speaking, only playing in a third of the games, you know, and then so now your actual direct impact is less. But with that being said, it's like you can only impact as much as you can, so you have to try to maximize the impact with having less reps to like stay comfortable, you know. So that is a big part of it too, where that's where you got to rely on being able to stay cool and calm and collected, so that when you're not playing, you can see what's happening and gain information to use for yourself. It's like if people are shooting banks, you know, if you're shooting a bank in a tournament, you know, if you see someone else shoot a bank and they hit it and you're like, ooh, that seemed to go way short, for example, you know, and now, you know, you come up and now you have the bank. Now that allows you then to be like, I saw the reaction of the ball off the rail, and I know that I need to do a different thing, you know, because it's not going to be, you know, it's not necessarily going to be your table. You're not going to know the exact physics, you know, and then because you're hitting less balls over the course of like even an hour or 30-minute match, the table conditions can change, you know, and change enough to where balls that went earlier in the match cannot go now. Like if one of the guys that's playing is really sweaty hands and racks the balls, they'll get sticky, and now instead of being clean, they won't be clean anymore. And so if your opponent is racking and has dirty hands, and as now you break the balls, they break the balls, and now you're playing with a set of balls. It's not exactly the same as it was the last time you were at the table, you know. And it's not a big effect, but the point is that there can be a change that you're not necessarily aware of at any moment, and that anyone else that's playing on that table can expose you to that change without you actually having to even do anything by shooting a shot and running your own experiment to find out what the conditions of the table are. So it's important in teams events to like be aware even more of what's going on around you, and letting the real useful information get used, and then just learning how to take the stuff that's not really applicable and just let it flow off to the side. And I think it takes a little bit of time and energy to learn how to do that better and better, and it's a very valuable skill, because then when you go and play like in a singles event, now you're shooting all the shots, you're having, you know, everything is a little bit easier, you know, and then you're not necessarily feeling that pressure of having to like hold the team up or do well for the team. So, you know, as far as feeling, going back to the disappointment thing, I think a lot of it has to do with like, well, if you set enough like mini achievements that if you like, you know, level up in one or two areas, then you have no right to feel disappointed. Now any disappointment you feel is unwarranted, really, and now you got to investigate. It's like, well, why am I really disappointed? Is it really like appropriate to be disappointed, or am I just telling myself that I'm disappointed because I felt like things were supposed to happen that I really didn't have control over, and now my disappointment is coming from this like fiction that I've created around like a story that I thought was going to happen, and when it didn't happen that way, then now I'm not going to be happy about my life for, you know, however long that disappointment lasts, even though in general maybe you are a happy person, but like you're disappointed about not having good results. I'm like, well, you know, you're allowed to do that. I'll tell you that I think over time, I've been trying to learn how to be, you know, more grateful and accepting of the situation, and just there's really no reason to be disappointed, because the overall trend of my life is up, is going better and getting better. I feel like most people feel the same way. So, you know, if you can like take the long-term approach to it, it's like really there's no disappointment, because I know that even if I don't see right now the benefit from this, you know, supposed underperformance, you know, the true performance is not the balls going in and then you shaking hands as the winner. the true performance is, did I uphold my standard for my own behavior as best as I can? And that as long as I'm working towards that, then any mistakes that I make are correctable, and thus there's no reason to be disappointed about my behavior, because I'm recognizing when I'm behaving in a way that I don't want to behave, and then I'm replacing that, that memory with like, oh, that was my learning opportunity. I took that too much to heart, and it really wasn't that important, and I see that now. So in the future, when certain events like that happen, that I'm going to just let it go instead of like holding it to me and letting that create, an emotion that I don't want to feel. And that's the win. And that's what takes the disappointment and eliminates it, because it's just has to do with knowing before you make the mistake that you're already going to forgive yourself, that you already know that you're going to use it as a stimulus to have a greater response later, no matter what. Everything you do, you're a conscious person. I'm consciously paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm seeing myself when I start to exhibit negative, behavior patterns that I don't want to exist in my life, and I'm taking steps to improve that. So, any disappointment that I might feel temporarily is actually just, sort of an illusionary thing where it's like I'm still just succumbing to the negativity that I'm gradually removing from my life through my changing my behavior patterns. So eventually it will go away, because how could it not? I mean, eventually, if you remove a negative behavior at a time, there's only so many that are going to exist, and then they will be gone. In theory, right? If you do the work, you can become more positive as much as you want to. You can, be more precise with this game, and thus be able to succeed at a higher potential through the effort that you put in, and just knowing that that's the trend can, remove eventually. Then the disappointment will be like one of those things that just goes away through the knowledge that the process that we're using to live our lives is self-inflicting, as far as like removing those bad things. We don't have to necessarily try to like reduce our negativity. We just have to like realize that concentrating on our own growth and benefiting our life kind of like can take that disappointment away, if that makes sense. That's pretty much all I have to say about that for now. Do we have anything else, baby?
Oh, Jeremy's on. He said, good question. Appreciate the detailed answer.
Nice. What's up, Jeremy? What time is it right now?
It's 11 o'clock.
Oh, it's 11 o'clock. All right. Well, I guess we're not even going to hit the balls today. But I appreciate everyone's time. Hope you got some benefit. As always, any future content ideas or discussions that you'd like me to go through, please comment below, message me. I'm trying to do streams 2, 3, 4 times a week when I have time. We're going to eventually have a regular schedule, which right now is like, I think, Monday at 7 p.m. and then Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 10 a.m. However, not every week will we do all 4 of those days. If you go to the school channel, that has the official stream schedule on it, and then as it changes, it'll be on there. And then, of course, you can comment below, if you join the school group, then you can obviously contribute to the ideas for content, and we can support each other's wins, etc. on there. We're going to eventually be using that school group as the education platform for the Easy Street Billiards facility once we open it, and so it's going to be continuing to grow, and I'm excited for the potential of that. I don't know, what else do we got? If you guys are interested in merch, we just got our towels in. They're pretty sweet. Like woven.
Yeah,
Woven, so it's like all the way through Easy Street Billiards. You can get them on the website soon, or if you see us locally.
They're already live on the website.
Oh, nice. Yeah, they're live on the website. So we're like gonna fulfill the shipping from our house. If you're local to Tacoma, or you see us around, we have some in the trunk. And we're $15.
$15, yeah.
$15. We're gonna pay the taxes for the local delivery
Yeah,
through the Shopify store.
and no shipping.
Yeah, through the Shopify store. I think we're just running like $75 free shipping. You know, if you spend $75, you get free shipping. Other than that, hope you guys have a great day. We'll see you next time.